Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. This is Cable 2.
It makes me so excited to see the kind of energy that you bring back.
I think that there is more of a structure.
That we want excellent instruction in every class, every day for every student.
And we are so proud of the hard work done in our district. We are so proud of the hard work done in this district every day, and I am thrilled to welcome you to our first State of the District. We have not done this before in my 4.5 years here, and I want to thank our board for encouraging this and believing in us and supporting the work that's going on and asking us to take a few minutes to share that with our community. I do want to recognize board members here today. I think they've migrated to their own section. It probably feels good to sit here instead of here for a change. Happy to have our board chair, Dana Cottle-Jones, Marilyn Parker, Lyda Calvert-Hayes, Elizabeth Motzinger, Lori Goins-Clark, and if I missed someone, please flag me down. We're grateful for the support that they provide for us. I also want to recognize we invited a whole lot of stakeholders, and if you'll forgive me as I work through this presentation, I want to attempt to recognize lots of groups of people. This is a massive organization and a great community that supports it, and we would be remiss if we didn't make sure that even though the superintendent is the one up here talking, that we didn't recognize the work of all the folks on the team who make this happen for us daily. I do want to just ask if you would, if I start doing names, I will get myself in trouble. So I do want to ask if you are here as a member of our legislative delegation. I saw Representative Conrad come in. Do we have anyone else here from the legislature? Great. How about county commissioners? Do we have any commissioners with us this morning? We invited all of our mayors and township and council folks. Do we have folks from, I know I saw some familiar faces come in, so thank you all so much for being here and for your tremendous support. I want you to know that we are live streaming via web, via Channel 2 and YouTube, so we also welcome folks who are out in the community who may be joining us this morning. I also want to say that we have lots of partners in the House. Again, it would get dangerous if I start naming everybody, but from whether it's school health or foundational support or higher ed, I see lots of familiar faces, so I just want to thank all of you as well for being a part of our work. The format today, we hope, will be engaging for you. You all know my grandfather was a minister, so I promise you this won't be like church. I hope it will be more like a conversation that we have amongst parents and grandparents, where it's pretty easy to talk about and be proud of your kids and grandkids and all the amazing things that they're doing. My goal is to try to highlight some of those that may be unique or different or that you may not be aware of, to do a little update on progress towards our goals, to talk about work that has launched with our bond issue, and then we want to open it up for an opportunity for questions at the end, and we'll do our best to manage that hopefully in less than an hour. And somebody can give me time in the back if I start getting too verbose. We also will, at the end of this presentation, share an electronic opportunity for you to give us further feedback. Were there things that you didn't know that you learned here? Are there things you would have liked to know more about? Do you want more information. So there will be an opportunity at the end for you to share with us what you think and how we can improve upon this process if we do it again. So with that, I'm going to move up here where I have a little bit of a cheat sheet. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a massive organization, and it has lots of moving and uncontrollable parts, as anyone who works here knows. And we have a takeaway for you as you leave today that will give you a whole lot of those things that are statistical and sort of grounded in numbers about us. As we brainstormed for this, though, we thought it might be a little more entertaining to get started with Thank you. Now we can get started. We thought it might be a little more entertaining to get started with some more realistic kinds of numbers that all of us can relate to. We talk a lot about test scores and number of staff and miles traveled, but you probably had no idea that we use 450,000 rolls of toilet paper a year. You can see those miles traveled each week. How about fresh fruit? That's pretty remarkable, 76,000 pounds a month. And as we prepare for what's happening in the spring, 6,000 light bulbs that get changed in this district prior to testing to be sure that we create the right environment for our students. As I work through some of this today, I will recognize lots of folks who help us and who are a part of these important numbers, and I'll just ask you to do the same and raise your hand as we move through. Okay, Alex, clearly I am not following directions. It's just, okay. I gotcha, thank you. So you all know that we've had 3 goals for 3.5 years now. We've been working towards them. We're going to walk through each of those goals and share a little bit about our progress. I do want you to know that in the past year, we have also tried to reorganize around how we could more effectively deploy, support, and provide a greater level of accountability in this district. A year ago in the fall, we internally reorganized so that we have 5 instructional superintendents who directly support all of our 81 schools. They spend a lot of time in those schools, they provide support in those schools, they evaluate, they come back, and we work weekly on what are those common needs, threads, issues going on in our schools. I would like to ask if you're an IS, just raise your hand so we can say thank you for the hard work that you folks do. Also supporting these goals is a tremendous amount of leadership in this district. We have really focused on leadership development with opportunities for our assistant principals to specifically be grown and have opportunities to grow into leadership roles. And we have had a large number of new principals over the last 3 years in our schools. If you are a principal in the room, would you just raise your hand? We thank you for the hard work that you do every day. As a testament, some very beginning data on our leadership development efforts, particularly with partnership with Dr. Larry Coble and also BB&T University. I would tell you that one of the interesting stats from last year's good growth was that in the schools that made high growth, 78% of those leaders had participated in one or both of those leadership development programs. So while it is anecdotal, it is some beginning evidence for us that growing leaders and supporting them helps us move the district in the direction that we want it to go. A lot of work behind the scenes, often in supporting these three goals, comes from district instructional staff. A huge emphasis in the last several years on standards. How do we teach them better? How do we support teachers with standards? What kind of resources do they need? How do we get really down in the weeds on which standards our children aren't doing well on, and in fact design summer school around those standards, in fact design science training around those standards? And so I would also like to ask our instructional leaders, directors of programs, there are a lot of you here this morning, if you would also raise your hand, because we count on you as well, and thank you very much for your support. The sort of bedrock to this is back to some of those earlier numbers. How do we keep 127,000 miles a week? How does that move? How do we make sure that kids are safe and secure and in facilities that are comfortable and conducive to learning? And our executive cabinet and our operations team work tirelessly, especially this time of year, where one of those other uncontrollable factors is what the weather's going to do. And we are always challenged with those decisions, but we have folks who really work round the clock to help us do that work. And so if you are a part of that team, if you would also just raise your hand so we can say thank you to you as well. Our first goal, graduation rate, we come upon a benchmark at the end of this year, and we're really feeling good about the progress made. It's perhaps the goal we've had the longest opportunity to work on, almost 10 years, and we've also had great partnerships from people in this room that have helped us with the support and effort and volunteerism and the programming to get close. We're excited about the fact that we have the highest graduation rate that we have ever had at 86.5, and we are also optimistic about crossing the finish line in June. I would tell you that 10 of our 13 traditional high schools have already met the 90% goal, and that allows us this year to get more targeted about the supports for those schools that have not met the goal, and also to learn from those who have achieved the goal, what's working, what kind of strategies, and share them with colleagues in the district. I do want to congratulate our high schools. Last year, 2016-17, we saw tremendous growth in high school achievement, and we're most grateful for the hard work that was done by high school staff and leaders and folks who support them. These are not huge jumps in numbers, but they are growth in major content areas that we assess. As you can see, particularly good strides in math, and we take any growth as important, and we believe that we've figured out some of the supports that help us get this. And our content area experts out there would tell you that this focus on standards and being sure that teachers who teach these courses have the right supports and resources to deliver them has made a difference, and would attribute a lot of this success to us being very focused on those standards. And you got to pass the courses and do that on time in order to impact graduation rate. We have been incredibly blessed in this community, whether it's the work of Crosby Scholars, whether it is Graduate It Pays, the tremendous support of United Way, the grants from chambers who are represented here. We would not do this work without community support, and we thank you very much for anything that you do to contribute to this. Our schools do believe that early identification of students, tracking them, from 9th grade, and now we've moved into a tracking system that allows us to really look at middle school, allows us to really look at individual students and provide the supports, whether that's mentoring, whether that's calling someone every morning and saying you can't have one more absence or tardy or you won't get credit for this course. A lot of strategies out there to support graduation. We have a quote here. Reynolds saw huge growth last year in all areas. One of our schools that jumped over the 90% rate, and Principal Alexander sharing that, you know, she's asked what are those factors that really made a difference in her school. It was really being intentional about programs that supported students, mentoring, credit recovery, Saturday Academy. Also, I think the focus on data here. Many of us, I know board members and others who visited Reynolds, we realized last year in talking to students there, they could tell you which standards they did not do well on. So they knew their benchmark data, and if you walked into any random class and said, what standards are you working on? Well, I'm in biology and I'm on working, you know, these are the ones I did not do well on. Students also understood their Lexile levels, something some of us as adults may not fully grasp, but they could tell you what they needed to do in order to grow themselves and to be successful in both the end of course exams as well as state assessments. Our second goal I consider really critical to the others. If we can see some success in closing gaps for our students, we will see success with everything. And this is also a commitment to a value and a belief that all students have capacity and all students can grow and learn in our district. We have seen some progress there. We are working hard to take where we've seen pockets of success in this district and replicate it. And you will hear a little bit about some schools that we're just showcasing today. It doesn't mean there aren't others that have happened upon strategies that we believe are helpful and will benefit the district if we can figure out how do they live in other areas across the district. If you look at this data, and we are, you should have access to this. We did send it out today, and so if you got an email from us, you should have access to it. And we also have paper copies if someone would like it. If you look at this data, you will see that the proficiency movement has been slow. There has been some progress, but we would sort of say we've been in a holding pattern overall in terms of progress for our identified subgroups. Our efforts to have impact on that have really focused on how do we improve core instruction, how do we make it meaningful, engaging, more rigorous for all students, how do we use very specific data to identify who are those students that need additional supports and interventions. And our accountability department has been very specific about doing that work for schools and being sure they have very specific data about students who are borderline, who need additional help, and then our instructional superintendents have been intentional about asking, what are we doing with that? How are we using it in individual schools to support students? I do again want to not sound like a grandparent with a favorite grandchild this morning, but recognize our high schools who saw some of the most significant progress in gap closing. More than 51% of them either met or made substantial progress towards this gap closing goal last year, and we need to lift up that. Typically that's not the place you see that kind of growth, and so we are very proud of what has happened in our high schools. The strategies vary by school. Every school is required to have a goal, and action steps, and we know that schools are working hard, but they're different, and so the subgroups look different in different schools, and the approaches to dealing with them are different. If 75% of your population come from non-English speaking homes, your strategies and the way you would reach those students may look very different from a school that doesn't have that population to serve. So we try to support individual effort, but we also are looking at what do we see working and how do we use that across the district. One exciting example that we want to share with you this morning has to do with how students see themselves in the curriculum. And we have two examples this morning because we are really seeing some traction, and it sounds like common sense, but how can we get very intentional about the diversity of our student population, seeing themselves and reading about themselves as a part of curriculum, as a part of the rigor and the core content standards. Last summer, we embarked upon a refresh or an update of our Infusion curriculum, and this example is just showing you how we have taken parts of our African American Infusion curriculum and embedded them into our social studies curriculum. So all teachers have to do is click on one of these links, and the resources, the activities, the supports that they may need to include two curriculums essentially in one is right at their fingertips. And we know that already we have seen greater exposure opportunity just because of the ease of use. And so as we continue to look at curriculum revision, this is a strategy we know works and will help our teachers. If you look at Glenn High School, one of our schools, we were proud of the 10 that came off the low performing list last year. Some huge gains for Glenn High School, not only in proficiency, but in gap closing. So if you look horizontally, you can see the growth proficiency for a subgroup. For example, the African American subgroup grew from 28.1 to 43.2. The number, that plus 19, is actually the gap closing number and not the increase in proficiency. And so significant growth for proficiency, but also some significant effort to close the gap. And so we've spent time looking at what did Glenn do and how do they believe they affected the change. And they would tell you, again, may sound a little like a broken record, focus on the standards. How do we help our teachers teach the standards? We look for them as we review lesson plans. We make sure they have the materials and supports they need. We call on district experts in the standards to come in and really work in small groups with our departments and our professional learning teams. Glenn also took a specific approach to literacy and tried to embed literacy strategies across every content area. They used some of their resources to employ a full-time literacy person for 2 years who really went into classes and worked with teachers and coached and also worked with subsets of students, because if I come to 9th grade and I'm reading 2 grade levels behind, managing a rigorous curriculum is going to be a challenge for me. And so that focus on literacy, I think, has also been very helpful to them. We also love the idea at Glenn that they actually brought kids in from some of the underperforming subgroups and said, what can we do differently? What do you need from us as adults in this building? And really opened up and had a conversation with students in their school about what they needed, what would make classes more engaging, and also created opportunities then for the staff to hear from those students. So some direct communication, because we want our kids to do well, and if the kids can tell us something we need to be doing differently, it has great power. It's very compelling. And I'm pleased that the staff at Glenn would tell you they believe that this was an actual strategy that helped them improve student outcomes in their building. We've also been looking at the success of Sedge Garden Elementary, another place where we saw some significant proficiency growth. And this reads the same way as Glenn, so you can see the growth horizontally in proficiency numbers, and then those numbers on the side show you a gap closing. The numbers are not as large in gap because if you look at those three major groups, you'll see they all grew. And we're glad for that. We want to close the gaps, but we're also excited when we can see this level of growth in all of our groups of students. I'm going to let them tell you a little more about their story here, and I'm sure you'll enjoy.
Demographic specific texts. That is where we choose the demographics that we have, such as African American or Hispanic, and make choices of books based on those. We have lead characters who are African American or Hispanic in the books. We created a list, our media coordinator created a list of all the books that we have in the media center and in our guided reading room that list the book. The book title lists what demographic it's specific to and its location. So the teachers can then come when they're planning a lesson to make sure that they're checking out books that these students would be interested in and can see themselves in. In every subject minus PE, you'll see books that are out and about. We try to tie literacy into everything that we can. When a teacher knows what a specific child enjoys or believes in or likes, they can find books that can tailor to their interests. Let's look in your desk. Hey, come on. Can you show these gentlemen your book? Show these gentlemen your book. This young woman came to us from Korea. She had never been to school in the States. She knew zero English, and her teacher was at a bookstore and saw a book, brought it in, and this child has fallen in love with the fact that she can see her own face on the cover of a book. So we're not just reading the African American books to the African American children. That way we can also teach the diversity in it, because it's just as important for a Caucasian student to realize that there are books written about African Americans and Hispanics, as well as an African American to see the culture that the Hispanics books are written about. So we were able to close our achievement gap between our African Americans, our Hispanics, and our Caucasian students while growing them all. And I think that's where the success comes from, is we didn't see a dip in any demographic. We saw growth in all, but our African American and our Hispanics grew faster than the others. The more you put them inside a story, the better a reader they're going to be.
I think that said a whole lot about strategy. I just want to reinforce that that in order to know what kids are interested in, you have to have a relationship with them. And I think that's also a huge piece of the work for all of us. And how do we build those relationships, not only with students, but their families, understand their needs and how we can serve them. But thank you, Sedge Garden, for being a highlight in our gap closing goal. Third goal, third grade reading. You may have heard me say this or read us talk about the fact that this has been an incredible challenge for us. And part of the challenge has been watching how hard people are working in classrooms and not necessarily seeing the data move the way we would like to see it move. And so part of this for us has really been rethinking how do we approach literacy in the district, what do people need, listening to their needs and trying to provide better and more targeted support. I want to say that we've been very open about our progress being somewhat elusive here, particularly as it relates to the end of grade test. But I want also for you to know about the tremendous energy around our kids learning to read in this district. We started early on. I think we're in year 3 of the district supporting reading interventionists in all of our elementary schools. And we didn't just put people out there and say, go do. We actually have them serving kids 4 days a week, and they have undergone intensive training 1 day a week in how do we diagnose, prescribe. Early on, our first round of sort of evaluating that work, we saw we did not have enough emphasis on reading comprehension. And so through partnerships with foundations, we've been able we're in our second round of training with Appalachian State on really how our interventionists can add 5 minutes to a section of time with a child and really get better benefits in terms of improving their reading comprehension levels. We also have done enormous training in the district and have several pilots on how do different approaches work, even though all of them are grounded in guided reading. So we have Orton Gillingham training going on, and we're looking at delivery of that in 2 different elementary schools in the district. We have several schools that are working in American Reading Company and the approach that American Reading Company trains, so that we can look at those success levels around the district. But all of that has really been embedded in our knowing that if we deliver guided reading in the way it is intended, we should get a better result. We have sort of started a little experiment second semester with 3rd grade, and so we have just completed the first round of training for every 3rd grade teacher in the district. We will have 2 additional sessions. There will be coaching, there will be walkthroughs, and we, as we mentioned earlier, are focusing on the areas that we know that we do not do well in a district. So in the guided reading wheel, what are those 2 components really that we've narrowed it to that we believe we can do a better job of helping children understand and deliver? And we'll ask you to stay tuned on whether we believe that helps us get a better outcome. And if it does, then we can use it as a model for other grade levels in our district. I do want to say that you hear, and because we have supportive legislative folks in the audience, you hear a lot about class size these days, and I just think it's really important that we honor the notion that smaller class size is helpful. And while there are some challenges in how we deliver it, a child having more attention from a highly skilled teacher that knows how to reach them where they are, we know will be beneficial to our children. And so we're proud that our district has been able to manage the reduction this year, and we also are proud that we have, for the most part, been able to hire those teachers. So we thank all of you in schools and across the district who have helped us do that. We also have a whole lot of strategy going on before 3rd grade. And while the measure starts at 3rd grade, we know that kids need a lot from us before they ever get there. Many of you may know that we have been blessed to open 14 additional pre-K classrooms in the last 18 months, essentially, due to the support of Project Impact. And just January, we have some beginning data where we have used one instrument across all of our pre-K classes, so we were able to look at how our district pre-K did, which was nice growth to see, and how did those Project Impact classrooms do within the context of the district. Part of the reason for wanting to do that is that we piloted a new STEM curriculum, a pre-K STEM curriculum in those Project Impact classrooms. So we're also wanting to see, did that different curriculum have an opportunity for those kids to see greater growth than perhaps what we may be doing in other pre-K classrooms, so that we can learn from that. We also have reorganized so that we just in December filled the first director position for an Office of Early Learning. How do we coordinate efforts across these grade levels instead of looking at them separately? The continuum of pre-K to third grade, and what does that look like? What are the needs? What are the coaching supports and the training supports that teachers may need? I'm going to play the beginning of this. The beginning is fun because I think we need a little breather here. You've been so intently sitting, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit while there's some pictures that just hopefully help you see pre-K and what's going on about some of our other efforts.
I see you, I see you, la 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 la. I see you, I see you, la 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 la. I see you and you see me, la 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 la. I see you and you see me, la 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 la.
Slowly, hide behind your window. All eyes on me. Braylon, your body's under control. Ready?
I see you, la 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 la. I see you, la 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 la. I see you and you see me, la 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 la. I see you and you see me, la 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 la. La 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 la.
Can you do that? Come on. Get you a little motivated there. Thanks to Cook Literacy Model School for sharing with us. One of the things we know in our Restart School, and part of Restart, is how do we learn things in sort of an experimental environment that we can transfer. And Cook has the largest retention this year of children in kindergarten who were served there in pre-K than they've had since we've been measuring that transition. And so we know where kids and families start to feel comfortable and excited that we can keep them in school and in their communities. While this is going on, I want to focus on these efforts for just a minute. We have been able to work on summer programming because of support of community and Project Impact. We also have been specifically able to target children who have not had these pre-K experiences, and we have, for the last 2 summers, operated Pathway to K with great success. So these are children who have no pre-K experience, who come for 3 weeks, and we measure weekly their progress, and they make significant progress in just 3 weeks in some of the constructs that we measure in kindergarten. I was nervous, people have heard me say this, about sharing the data with the Project Impact Board, these business folks who are giving us lots of money, and we want to be sure that we rise to the level of expectations. And I took the first round of Pathway to K data in there, and I was worried about talking about the numbers, and the conversation around the table quickly went to, you mean kids come to school and they don't know which way to hold a book? You mean kids come to school and they don't know which hand to hold a pencil in? So the work here is really kindergarten preparedness. And our goal, of course, is to track these children, even with just a 3-week program, to see how they compare to their peers as they move through our system. Because of the success of Pathway to K, we're adding this year a pathway to first grade. So how do we do the same thing with kids who need a little extra help being ready for first grade? and that huge reading experience that awaits them in terms of the first grade experience. A lot of this opportunity and support has come through teacher leaders in our district. The work with Pathway to K comes out of Power of K, which has been an intentional effort to look at how we deliver kindergarten instruction, and that is through lifting up teacher leaders. We also this year launched our first ever Teacher Leadership Academy. We had over 1,000 teachers who met our criteria. They were invited to apply. We had quite a few of them apply, and we were able to fund 40 who are now helping us with model classrooms, who are helping us with training, who are helping us coach their colleagues. Where are their colleagues who can benefit from additional support, and really pairing them up with that teacher extraordinaire so that they get the benefit of their experience. We have used Cook as an incubator. We have learned a lot. One of our biggest takeaways with Restart is the flexibility. Many times school folks, especially us old ones, we say, well, we learned this and next year we'll fix it when we start a new school year. And the beauty at Cook with the flexibility they've had has been, it didn't work this quarter, we're changing it now. And so the ability to move staff, people who are hired to do one thing wind up doing something different in the second quarter, is flexibility that we believe could benefit all of us, particularly in our most challenged schools. So how can we look at being sure our schools have greater flexibility? We also, in this reading challenge, are looking at the powerful combination of Orton-Gillingham paired with American Reading Company. And Cook is another sort of experiment for us to see, is this strategy that we can use in other schools across our district. We want to end on a big, huge thank you. We are thrilled that our community passed a $350 million bond issue in November of 2016. We are thrilled that if you drive down, and I won't let Dr. Cohn start talking because we won't get him to stop, but if you drive down, you can see the new Paisley Lawrence is up out of the ground, and we're very excited about the potential of that. Work has begun at Con Oak as well, and we have projects phased out for the next 8 years that would not be possible without the support of our community. What's incredibly overwhelming to me, being a fairly new member of this community, is that this bond issue passed in every precinct in our county. And that isn't because, in my opinion, we ran a good campaign. I believe you win campaigns by the work that happens every single day in every single classroom. People have to have some level of satisfaction to go raise their taxes at the ballot box. And so we are grateful for the collaborative effort that goes on in schools and in the community to support this kind of tremendous change in our schools. Along with buildings and renovations and pre-K centers, one of the fundamental components of that bond issue was a $24 million technology piece that touches every classroom in this district. We are about 415 classrooms into that installation. Obviously, we have to phase that work as well. But in 6 years, every classroom in this district will have modern technology, collaborative spaces for students to work. I'm amazed that I guess because in my time we didn't ever dream of such a thing, but I'm amazed at the impact that a table kids can sit around and write on has in engaging them in the learning process. But these are the kinds of elements in the equipment and technology piece, as well as a refresh of every media center in our school district that creates makerspace and opportunity for innovation for our children. If you want to, if you're passionate, there are links here. You can go in and see what's happening. There is weekly update of video. You can actually watch the machines and you can see the dirt move and what happens. If that's the kind of thing that you like to track. But both the county is tracking all of the projects as well as a link on our website. We want you to know we feel passionately about this work. We don't have all the answers, but we have lots of folks who are committed to finding solutions that work for our children. We have used the core values as a way to speak the same language and to embed what we're doing with a sense of pride. Folks may not always be able to raise a reading score, but they can treat every child as though they matter. They can live the core values and beliefs of this district, and we know that has impact for kids and their academic success. And then we're also working hard to create strategy where we can find evidence that it's effective. Just because it's been done is not the reason to keep doing it. We need to be able to show that our investments are making a difference for children, and those are key to the work that those of us in leadership positions need to hold ourselves and each other accountable. I'm going to leave this up as we move to a little bit of question here. I do want to just close by again reiterating it was my honor to get to be the talking head today. All of this happens because of all of you, and it is just an incredible honor to serve with you and to serve this community and the children here. We are incredibly blessed, and if you've never been anywhere else, you may not recognize the level of support in Forsyth County. We are able to do things that many of our surrounding counties and counties across the state don't have the privilege of doing because of the tremendous local support and the support of our partners and donors in this community. And so all of this happens because of that collective effort here.
It makes me so excited to see the kind of energy that you bring back.
I think that there is more of a structure.
That we want excellent instruction in every class, every day for every student.
And we are so proud of the hard work done in our district.